Doctor Strange 2 used Doom's tech. In Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, the big headline moment everyone remembers is John Krasinski finally appearing as Reed Richards. I was also hoping for Emily Blunt, but that's fine. I'm still happy with our current Sue Storm. But the more interesting detail isn't who Krasinski played but how he arrived. When Doctor Strange is first brought before the Illuminati of Earth 838, Reed isn't there. He suddenly materializes on a circular platform after Master Mordo announces him. Later on, producer Richie Palmer confirmed that this wasn't just a random portal effect. The device Reed uses is directly inspired by Dr. Victor Von Doom's time platform from the comics, technology Doom famously designed himself. In Marvel lore, the time platform isn't just a teleportation pad, it's Doom-level tech, something that allows precision movement through time and space, and something even Reed Richards usually doesn't build without Doom's influence. It's also deeply tied to time travel stories involving Kang, including encounters with Ramatut, one of Kang's earliest identities. What makes this detail especially interesting is where it appears. Earth 838 is meant to be more advanced than the main MCU timeline. So instead of showing Doom directly, Marvel shows us a world where his technology already exists and is casually in use by the smartest man alive. That lines up quietly with the MCU's broader time travel arc, from Loki introducing He Who Remains to Kang becoming the saga's central threat in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Doom's tech showing up before Doom himself is exactly how Marvel likes to see things. Now, to be clear, this doesn't mean Marvel had Doom locked in from the very beginning. Rights issues alone make that unlikely. But it does show that by the time Multiverse of Madness was written, Marvel was already laying conceptual groundwork, introducing Doom ideas without introducing Doom the character. Kang hid Dr. Doom. Another clue floating around online claims that Kang didn't just manipulate timelines, he hid Dr. Doom himself. The idea goes like this. Kang supposedly knew that Victor Von Doom was inevitable, too dangerous and too smart, someone who would eventually storm his citadel and tear down the entire multiversal order. So instead of erasing him, Kang did something smarter. He redirected him. According to the theory, Doom didn't disappear. He was rewritten, turned into Tony Stark. Same genius with the same obsession and control. Same ability to crack time travel, just pointed in a different direction. In this version of events, Tony becoming Iron Man wasn't an accident. It was a controlled outcome because Kang needed time travel to exist. Without it, there's no TVA, no sacred timeline, and no He Who Remains sitting at the end of time. Fans noticed that Doom and Stark share traits: ego, genius, futurism, obsession with legacy, and connect dots that feel right emotionally, even if they're not canonically real. Marvel consistently writes Doom and Stark as parallel minds, two men who would absolutely collide if they ever shared the timeline. And now that Stark is gone, there's finally room for Doom to arrive without any overlap. Doombox in Moon Knight. Moon Knight is one of the strangest entries in the MCU, so fans started looking closer. Right from the first episode, the show feels kinda off. There's no Avengers and no blip references. It almost feels disconnected on purpose. And it all starts with Stephen Grant blacking out and waking up somewhere that doesn't feel like London or anywhere we recognize. When Stephen wakes up in that grassy field, the camera slowly reveals a small village in the distance. Old rooftops, stone buildings, a very specific European look, and high above it all, perched on the mountain, is a massive castle. That image alone set off alarm bells for comic readers because it looks uncannily similar to Dr. Doom's castle from the comics. The fortress that looms over Doomstad, the capital of Latveria. Tall, imposing, isolated, and framed like a symbol of control rather than beauty. Even the winding road leading down from the castle mirrors how Doom's domain is often depicted on the page. Now here's where things get interesting. During Steven's escape, when he hides in the ice cream truck and blacks out again, the camera lingers just long enough to show a box behind him. On it, written plainly, are the letters Von D. That suggests that he might be actually in Latveria, where Doom resides. Putting that detail in that episode plays a major role of Marvel seeding in Victor Von Doom even before they announce him as the main villain in the future upcoming Marvel projects. Mobius told Loki. In Loki Season 1, Episode 1, Marvel may have slipped in one of the most unsettling stories in the entire multiverse saga, and it's delivered casually, almost as a throwaway line. I didn't even notice it the first time I watched the series. While Loki is questioning how the TVA decides who lives and who gets erased, Mobius tells him about a past mission. A TVA team was sent near the Black Sea in Eastern Europe to prune a variant responsible for 5,000 future deaths. There's just one problem. The variant was an 8-year-old boy. Mobius hesitated. Timelines began branching, other hunters were killed, and eventually his partner, Ravonna Renslayer, stepped in and pruned the child herself. On its own, it sounds like a moral anecdote, but when you actually look at how the TVA operates, this story becomes becomes strange. Because the TVA does not prevent mass death. They let genocides happen. They let apocalyptic events unfold. That's established back in season 1. Their real job, the one they don't know they're doing, is preventing rival variants of He Who Remains from ever existing. So if the TVA was ordered to erase this child, it wasn't because he would kill 5,000 people, it's because what he became threatened Kang himself. Now layer in the details. Eastern Europe, near the Black Sea. A single individual acting alone, destined to become a mass killer, important enough that the TVA intervenes early. Who could it be? In Marvel lore, there is exactly one villain who fits that profile perfectly. Dr. Victor Von Doom. In the comics, Latveria's location has shifted over the years, but it's consistently placed somewhere in Eastern Europe, often near Romania, not far from the Black Sea. Doom is also famous for being someone whose existence alone reshapes timelines. Entire futures change depending on whether he lives, rules, or is stopped early. That makes the TVA's reaction suddenly make sense. Loki Episode 1 was released around June 2021, around the same period when Marvel executives were reportedly reassessing the multiverse saga's direction behind the scenes. We now know that Marvel Studios eventually pivoted away from Kang as the central villain and toward Doctor Doom. That makes Mobius' story feel less like filler and more like a seed.
A good story. Listen to this one. A couple of hunters went out on a mission somewhere near the Black Sea.
Doom's castle in Loki. When Loki introduced the citadel at the end of time, a lot of fans immediately felt deja vu because visually the citadel doesn't look like a typical Kang structure. It's not sleek, it's not even futuristic, and it's not technological in the way the TVA is. Instead, it looks ancient, monolithic, gothic, almost medieval, tall spires, harsh stone, a sense of isolation and finality. And for comic readers, that aesthetic rings a very specific bell. The citadel strongly resembles Doctor Doom's castle, the same kind of looming fortress that dominates Latveria in the comics. A structure that isn't just a home, but a symbol of absolute control. One man in the throne, one domain at the edge of everything. That resemblance becomes harder to ignore once Loki and Sylvie enter the citadel. Inside, the space feels ceremonial, and lining the interior are two massive cloaked statues, faceless, hooded figures standing like silent sentinels. They're not identified, they're not explained, they're just there, and visually, they look far closer to Doom imagery than Kang imagery. Doctor Doom is almost always depicted cloaked, imposing, and statue-like, a ruler who mythologizes himself. Kang, by contrast, is usually shown as a conqueror surrounded by tech, not monuments. And there's another subtle point people miss. The Citadel is not Kang's natural home. He Who Remains admits he ended up there. He didn't build it to rule. He built it to wait. Doom, on the other hand, is a character who actively claims spaces like this and reshapes them into symbols of himself. So when fans say the Citadel looks more like Doom's castle than Kang's base, they're not saying Doom was hiding there. They're saying Marvel may have already decided what ultimate power in the MCU looks like, and it doesn't look like Kang. Tony Stark always knew. There's a moment in Avengers Endgame that fans keep circling back to. When Tony Stark travels back to April 7, 1970, he unexpectedly runs into his father, Howard Stark, in an elevator. Howard is carrying flowers and mentions that his wife, Maria, is expecting. Suddenly, Tony freezes, and some fans take that reaction as proof that Tony isn't just Tony, that he's something else, that he somehow knows there's a contradiction. I already tackled this on my other video, so make sure to check that out after this for more details for this specific scene in Endgame. Stark's nightmare was Doom's. Back in Avengers Age of Ultron, Tony Stark experiences one of the most unsettling visions in the entire MCU. He sees the Avengers dead, the Earth broken, and alien forces overwhelming everything. Suddenly, Captain America turns to him and says, "You could have saved us." At the time, it's framed as a nightmare, a fear-induced hallucination caused by Wanda Maximoff's mind manipulation. Tony shrugs it off, but it completely changed him. It's the moment that pushes him toward Ultron, toward control, toward the belief that he alone has to protect the world. Fast forward years later to Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and Marvel quietly reframes what dreams actually are. According to that film, dreams are windows into alternate realities. When you dream, you're seeing another version of yourself, another universe playing out somewhere in the multiverse. So once that rule is established, Tony's nightmare suddenly looks different because what he saw wasn't abstract. It was very specific and coherent, and it lined up frighteningly well with the future the MCU is now heading toward. A broken Avengers lineup and a world-ending threat. So with that, it raises a possibility. What if Tony wasn't seeing a fear? What if he was seeing another timeline? One where the Avengers fall and the consequences of that failure give rise to something worse? Not Ultron, but Doctor Doom. And if Avengers Doomsday revisits that imagery, even visually, it wouldn't be a retcon. It would be a payoff to something Marvel planted nearly a decade earlier. Endgame's loose ends. By the end of Avengers Endgame, Marvel tells us something that sounds neat and tidy on the surface, but completely falls apart when you look closer. Bruce Banner explains that if you return the Infinity Stones to the exact moment they were taken, the alternate timelines should collapse as if they never existed. Except the movie itself immediately contradicts that idea. Let's start with what was clearly handled. The 2012 branch timeline, the one where Loki escapes with the Tesseract, is explicitly pruned by the TVA in Loki. The TVA even says it out loud. What the Avengers did was supposed to happen. You escaping was not, so that branch is gone. But Endgame creates other branches that cannot be erased just by returning stones. The biggest one is 2014. In that timeline, Thanos leaves 2014 and never returns. Nebula leaves 2014 and dies in the future. Gamora leaves 2014 and stays in the present. That means 2014 is permanently altered. There is no Thanos, there's no Nebula, and Gamora never comes back. Returning the Power Stone does nothing to fix that. The MCU itself later tells us that people living outside their native timeline destabilize reality. Doctor Strange even says it directly. Your arrival here confuses and destabilizes reality. So either the TVA aggressively pruned these timelines off-screen, or they were allowed to exist. And if they were allowed to exist, that means Endgame intentionally fractured the multiverse far more than Marvel ever showed us. Now let's talk about the one event that definitely wasn't planned. 1970. Steve and Tony weren't supposed to go there. That detour only happens because of Loki's escape. In that mission, Pym particles are stolen, Howard Stark is influenced, Tony confronts his past emotionally, and Steve learns he can go back and live a life. Nothing about that trip is clean, and unlike the stones, you can't undo character decisions, which leads to the biggest loose end of all. Steve Rogers doesn't just return the stones, he chooses to stay in the past and live an entire life with Peggy Carter. That is a brand new timeline, one created deliberately by a man who knows exactly what he's doing. And here's why this matters for Doom. Endgame doesn't end the multiverse, it breaks it quietly. Loose ends, unpruned branches, people displaced in time, entire realities left unexplored. Because the multiverse saga doesn't need Kang to fall apart, it just needs someone ruthless enough to take control of the mess. And that's where Doctor Doom fits. Not as someone who caused the chaos, but as someone who inherits it. That's 12 minutes.
Thank you for watching, like the video, and don't forget to subscribe for more flops.